Okay, being that time, I'll call the meeting to order. May I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Present tonight, Chairman Pigeon, Vice Chair Hurd, Clerk Bailey, Mr. Novick, Mrs. Rumney, and Mr. Kaminsky. Vansky.
It's getting better. He did a second name this time, and last name.
Practice. Are there any citizens' participation? And there apparently is not. Moving on, the typical Finance Committee matters, we review the town meeting warrant. The only issue we have open in the context of a vote is our solar pilots, and we asked Jackie, the assessor, if she would come back with some information. Jackie, could you please?
Since last week, I have actually spoken to a couple of you about the solar, and I just want to remind everybody that we've already signed a solar pilot in the Springtown meeting, so we've already done this, we've set a precedent, so this isn't something new, first of all. And as far as some of the concerns that you had, I think that we have addressed most of the issues in the way that we have developed the pilots. I know it was somebody who said last week that they thought pilots were mostly for education. Was that you, Jerry?
No,
Somebody,
I've only
okay.
heard of them in
Anyway.
not-for-profit context.
Right, well, there are actually regulations in place that allow assessors to go into pilot agreements with energy companies. And that's for, it's extended onto renewable energy. It was originally put forth for power plants and hydro and so forth, but any type of energy generating company. Pilots are very common too. And they've become more common in solar as solar has become more common in general. I sent to Bernie today a packet that had the court decisions that I kind of told you guys about last week, where the ATB had taken the old laws that were on the books regarding solar and solar exemptions and kind of broadly interpreted them and ended up exempting 2 commercial solar facilities, which were not seen through to the appeals process to SJC for some reason. We don't know why, but until things get to the SJC and we get some kind of a ruling, we are at the mercy of them going to the ATB and having the precedent set now to make them exempt. And that's one of the reasons that Wareham and a lot of other cities and towns decided to start doing the pilots. The pilots going forward are based on the one we've already written and are in keeping with full and fair cash value, which is required by the guidelines issued by the DOR. In the packet that I'm sure Bernie will share is the 2 decisions for the court, also a copy of the pilot that we have executed right now, and the analysis that you guys had requested last week, which will illustrate how our pilot is written. I am in negotiation right now with 4 solar fields at the moment. I know there are at least 1 or 2 more that want to talk to us, and of course we have a huge one proposed right now that will actually be 4 separate projects coming down the pipe. So we have quite a few. I think in the terms of do we tax it as personal property and just let it fly versus a pilot, it's not really a question at this point, because we don't want to lose our solar tooling exemption. And again, it's not, we're not giving any deals to anybody, and it's based on full and fair cash value.
Okay. I met with Jackie this afternoon, thank you very much. For example, President's Pilgrim Nuclear Station pays a $10 million a year pilot to the town of Plymouth, which is going to be a big hit when they leave. So there is precedent right very close by for power plants paying pilots. And as Jackie mentioned, we are having the pilots approved. Jackie goes through and does the negotiations, but the negotiations get a lot of scrutiny.
Yes.
We take them to our town council, they go to the town administrator, they go through the town board of selectmen, and they come to the finance committee and also town meeting. So it's not something that she's doing in a vacuum or without
Direction.
a lot of direction and oversight on that, so I think that's important.
I'm not going rogue, guys.
No.
I don't think that was the point of our
No,
discussion.
I know that, I know
With,
that.
Jackie mentioned she sent me a packet today, and she did. However, I spent most of the day in surgery, and I got home, and whatever they had stuck me with, I fell asleep, and I literally woke up 30 minutes ago. So my apologies for not forwarding it to you, I will certainly do so. And yes, everything she referred to is explained in that packet. Thank you very much for that, Jackie.
Well,
and your
and
efforts.
the reason that I actually came by this evening is that, and it just so happens that, I am not going to get the negotiations that I had hoped to get done in time for town meeting. So, we are actually going to be voting over the article and, passing on it, but we're coming back in the spring. So I want you guys to all feel comfortable when it shows up again as to what is going on. So that's why I came back again tonight. Right now, at this moment, with what I know of, we've got about $16 million worth of solar floating around the town. So that's not exempt. That's just the taxable stuff. So we certainly don't want ATV cases turning that exempt. And that's the whole crux of it. Because like I explained to these guys, I'd be better off without the paperwork personally. But this is what the town has decided.
So do the solar companies use the threat of seeking an exemption to reduce the amount they pay a pilot?
No, I cannot reduce the amount they pay in pilot. It has to be full and fair cash value. So there isn't a negotiation as far as, if it's valued at $2 million, we'll pay on $1 million. That's not how this is being written. They like to be in a pilot because of the investment. The way that their business model is structured, the investors in the pilots, in the solar companies, like to know what the expenses are coming down, especially over the next 20 years. So being in a pilot is beneficial for them for that reason as well. They know what's coming down the pike. Pilots can be structured in different ways. There are some towns that collect more in the beginning or more in the end or so forth and so on. But ours is very straightforward, very simple. And it's just based on fair market value. I have them valued, and then we tax them and move right into the agreement based on the same thing. We don't know what next year's tax rate's gonna be, or the year after, or the year after. It could go up, it could go down, it could go sideways. We just don't know. And if you look at the history of the tax rates, they're all over the place. So it's not like you can even take a 5-year average. But our pilots make some assumptions, and we increase the taxes 2.5% every year over the course of the 20 years. So,
Just don't know why anyone would go
stop
into this.
that. Don't
It
say that,
sounds like a
please.
worst case scenario for them.
Please don't say that.
But as a prudent business person, it seems like this is the worst I could do.
Bernie,
is-
tell them to
No.
stop.
I have
Tell 'em.
never.
Excuse me, let me interrupt something here. And I think we should be very conscious of what Jackie has said. They're currently in negotiations, and I spoke with Claire this afternoon, and because they are currently in negotiation, they are contemplating, or they're not contemplating, they're going to pull the article so as not to complicate those negotiations. One has already been settled, it's a precedent as far as the town is concerned, and how they're entering into these negotiations. Jackie is performing all of this at the direction of the selectmen. They have ordered her to do so. Not to complicate her job anymore, I would appreciate if we would be careful as to our wording of of our comments, so as not to make things more difficult for the town as well as for Jackie as our agent acting in those negotiations.
Just, again, on the same thing, because this is a negotiated item, so we really can't discuss the specifics of the actual numbers, and I think that's appropriate, but in discussions with Jackie, they do seem fair to the town. And I think you can take my word for that, that they are fair for the town,
Doesn't sound like we're voting on it tonight anyway, so.
so.
They were intending to pull the article, as well as a couple other articles that are inappropriate for this particular time frame. And this is one of them, and I can understand why, as Claire and I discussed, she was very pointed, we are in the middle of negotiations. And to make any comments or take any stands on those issues would complicate that. The ability of the town to get a fair agreement or one that benefits to the town as much as possible.
There's another item which comes up in that, in the review of this, each one of them has to go before town meeting, I believe.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So as a consequence, it has to be a completed negotiation before it comes to town
Right.
meeting.
And I just don't have enough time to get it from point A to point B to point C, so we'll do it in the spring, and then hopefully we'll have another couple to go with it, and,
A whole bunch.
yeah.
Good.
I would just say, I don't want to interfere in the negotiations, there's gonna be withdrawing of anything. But it seems to me that as a finance committee, the fact that it's reviewed by town council to me is irrelevant, because he's reviewing it for legal stuff, not business stuff. And I don't know how, we can make a decision that we think it's likely that an exemption will be claimed, and so we're better off getting anything.
Well, that's why I sent you the packet, so you can look at the court decisions. It
But-
also has the pro forma, the analysis that you asked me for. You take a look at that, and I think that'll answer some of your questions.
Just for the record, we need data in order to make financial evaluations. And this may, in fact, from the selectmen's point of view, and the town's point of view, be the best thing to do, but it'd be nice to know where things stand financially with this, that's all.
And again,
That's my,
I think Jackie could do that in a closed meeting.
Yeah, we can do that, and I think what we'll do, and I apologize, Jackie, for the circumstances, I was unable to print it out.
That's okay.
The original documentation regarding the existing pilot,
That's in the packet too.
outstanding, and I think that we would read that and take a look at how you worked it out, and know that you're following the same process this time as well as with the original.
Yeah, that's all in your packet that I sent today.
And again, that's my responsibility. As I said, I apologize, I wasn't able to.
Well,
do
you
that.
have to be awake in order to do that, so.
Well, I was reading it under sedation, of course, but I was trying to read it.
So like as I said, we have about $16 million right now, value-wise, in the solar fields that we have out there right now.
Yeah, I think everything is guided right now in the conversation that you and I had back in 1970. And their view of solar and what it does, as far as the law is concerned, is from that era. And the legislature is trying to update it, we're trying to hopefully make sure that we have an agreement in place that benefits the town, so the legislature and the lobbyists, et cetera, that are working do not shortchange us. And I think waiting 6 more months is not gonna do us harm, nor the owners of those solar fields.
Like, when you say 16 million, is that the total
That's the
value
value.
of the solar fields that are now operable or being built?
Yes,
Alright.
both.
Yeah.
I-
Is that the property or is that just the equipment?
That's just the personal property value. In a lot of cases, the personal property does not belong to the landowner. The land is leased.
So there are 2 separate tax entities that you're dealing with
Yes, for every,
for everyone.
Solar
One is the property and the other is the personal property.
correct.
Real estate, excuse me, real estate and
Yes.
personal property.
And the fact that Jackie's using real and present value, she's required to, not something she arbitrarily decided. Is there any other questions?
Just for clarification, when you do it, you're talking payment in lieu of taxes for both the real estate as well as the personal property? or
No,
is it-
just the personal property. The only time real estate can be considered for a pilot is if it's owned by the same owner, and that is very rarely the case. In any event, as far as what we are going to do, we will always keep them separate, because having a few of this way and a few that way just becomes cumbersome.
Anything else?
No?
Nope. Jackie, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the effort you
Thank
put
you.
into this. Under the circumstances with what Claire has told me, I would suggest we pass on this or take no action. May I have a motion then to take no action?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
I'll be happy to come back in the spring and talk again.
Still gonna be around?
Yes, I will.
Absolutely.
God willing.
Yes.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded to take no action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Are there any articles that anyone feels strongly enough that they'd like us to reconsider or to just further discuss?
Let's see.
The one that involves the special ed fund, the $200,000, have we heard back as to their willingness to put what they collect back into that? Is it their understanding or our understanding that if they collect $75,000 from whoever reimburses, that they'll be back for $125,000 next year?
I have asked Michael to provide us with information as to the last 4 or 5 years, as to in each of those years, how many came up, or how many sped students joined the system during the school year. That's the impact that this is trying to negate. And to give us an idea of what it was costing. I have not heard back from him at all. I did coincidentally pick up on one of the school committee meetings. When they passed this, it was presented that this would be $200,000, but the language of the bill itself, the House bill that has been passed, that he refers to in the chapter and verse, allows them to have up to 2% of their operating budget in this fund. So it could go up to, that is up to cap at around 700,000. And to answer your question, Stuart, as it was presented to Michael, to the school committee, no monies that they are reimbursed for these expenses is being placed into this fund. It goes into what they call the circuit breaker, and it is up to the school committee if they want to transfer funds into it, but it was not presented to them that they do so. I was a little disturbed by that because Michael and I had discussed this prior to his presentation, and I thought it would be a good faith effort of the school committee to commit to do that, because obviously we've appropriated to cover the shortfalls. And the fund monies that they are reimbursed, which is not 100%, but is reimbursed the following fiscal year, but they could replenish it into this fund. And that was not presented to the school committee. So as their understanding is, we appropriate it into this fund, their request on a yearly basis. The amount is their decision as to how much to place into it. They put it on an article such as this.
Is, Article 31, there's 200,000, and there's also 200,000 in Article 3. Is that the same 200,000?
This article creates the fund.
Okay, so does this have to be taken first that time?
It will be.
It has to be,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Have to create it before we can deposit into it.
All right.
Mhm.
So they will make an effort. If the previous article that you mentioned comes up, someone will make a motion, or someone will ask Claire to defer that one and take 31 and then go back to that article. And they're requesting 200,000. As Michael referred to, he'd like to see 400,000 when they did his presentation to us here. And now I understand, when I saw the bill itself, he could go up as high as 700,000 if you think it's 2% of approximately 29 million, which is their operating budget.
Did they give any explanation as to why they didn't include this in their budget?
The amount of the monies, well, the monies is included in their current budget, has been in the past. When they've incurred these expenses, he has had to make allowances for the potential of someone coming in.
You know, but it was 200,000 shy this time. So
Not
No,
necessarily.
no. Their operating budget as it exists now, FY 2018, includes potentials for someone
Right.
coming in.
But if we approve this, they'll have $200,000 that they didn't have in their budget.
For sped
Excellent.
expenses, yes.
It's not in their budget, but they'll have it available.
And all I'm asking is, did they know about this possibility when they submitted their budget? And if they did, why didn't they ask for it then?
If they did, and I cannot speak to that, because the bill was introduced in 2016. And it makes reference in the article, and I couldn't tell you when it was passed. I have the printout. Derek and I were discussing it, because I was coming up with a totally different chapter and verse. The bill itself is 135 pages. But it's been in place for a year. Did they know about it? As I said, I can't speak to that. We have voted,
What would our expectation be for the following year? That they include this in some amount that they want to go into this fund in their budget,
it will be a separate request.
like this year?
Yes. That is, it's establishing it now and also putting monies into it.
Sorry, guys.
Putting monies into it would have to come up every year.
Yeah, but when they come forward with their budget, they can say, this, we know that we're gonna have to ask for this, and it's part of our budget now, so we.
This is a separate article. It has to-
We would hope that they would take it out of their budget.
This is monkey business if you don't consider this simply an increase to their budget. And all I'm trying to find out is that next year, are they gonna say to us, or to the town, that, here's our budget, and don't forget, we're anticipating that we're gonna have to ask for another $200,000, so when you pass this budget, if you choose to, understand it's $200,000 bigger than what we're presenting today.
I would speculate there will be two articles. One would be their operation, as we normally do through the budget. It would include, I would say, level fund, if not more, of course. This will be a separate request. So if I was operating the finance over on the school side, with this request, I would not have to plan within my budget for that possible, that potential cost to come up. Would I ask for that, what I'm currently asking for? Yes. Is the risk included in my current budget? Yes. Would it go down? highly unlikely. So I think
So effectively, if we approve this, we're approving a perpetual minimum of $200,000 in addition to what their current budget is. That's just the reality.
I agree. I agree with you.
It's a revolving fund, the monies in the revolving fund have to be voted each year.
I
So it's
understand.
not necessarily perpetual. Town meeting can turn it down. But
It's gonna be
In
a
effect-
recurring article next year.
in effect, it's going to be a recurring article.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that we have to ask the school committee when they come before us for next year's budget is, how do they accommodate this revolving fund?
Now, what I was going to do for those circumstances is to print out, because the information I get from Michael has account numbers. One is for the sped budget exclusively in the series of account numbers. And breaking out what they have requested previous years. So you know what the increase in that specific line item is, in addition to now the article requesting the extra 200,000. And it's 200,000 this year. It's up to, as I said, approximately 700,000, being 2% of 29 million. That's in the bill.
And I get all that, but from this point forward, I don't think we should be fooled, that we have to take this into account as we consider the entire budget of the school committee. I mean, it's 200,000 bigger than it was.
Well, at the same time, with the school committee, the school budget does not include retirement benefits for teachers, does not include a lot of things that we do pay in addition.
And we talk about that every year,
And I
as
think
we
that-
consider their budget.
Right, and that's very appropriate.
I think it's just a sneaky way to put their foot in the door. That's how I read it. I don't know how you guys read it. Anybody else feel that way?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's just a way to add to their budget in a way that,
It may
It's not a
not add,
budget increase.
it,
No,
it may not add to their budget if they don't have a student that transfers in and requires these funds, then it would just sit there. So in fact, it wouldn't add to their budget.
True, but I think if we look back at the last 5 years,
There's a,
every year they've got one.
yeah, they may, that I don't know.
any,
But,
any
Also,
idea?
the school's underfunded, so if they're sneaking in a 200 grand.
I'm
I'm
not
kinda cool
opposed
with
to the
that.
money, I just don't like the way it came out.
I can see that. That makes a lot of sense.
What's any idea what kind of money they spent on this last year or this year, or, you know, any idea what they actually spent doing this?
I don't have
Is there a
any
number
notes.
around that anybody could
No.
find, you know what I mean?
I mentioned earlier before you arrived
Yeah,
that I
sorry, I
had
was
requested
late,
that
yeah.
information
Oh, you did,
from,
okay,
from
okay,
Michael, and I had not received it.
okay, sorry. I didn't
That's
mean
quite
to
all
repeat
right.
the question, yeah. And I also have to leave my phone on, because my wife's in the, I usually shut it off, but in case I get a call, thanks.
Does it, Stuart, if you want, you could ask us to reconsider the vote, or we leave it as such, and in our explanation. Since we are taking no action on this, explanation as to why,
As I
that
said,
we are
I'm not
concerned about it.
opposed to giving money for this. I think it's appropriate, as Ellis said, the school system is seriously underfunded. They need all the help they can get.
It'll pass, no matter what we say, yeah, it's gonna
What bothers
pass.
me is the way, the process they used to get this. It won't happen again, at least not if I'm sitting here next year. It will be very explicit, and I think the town needs to understand it. This isn't some magical thing the legislature said, oh, you get free money. It's a
Well, I think-
$200,000, potentially a $200,000 increase this year to their existing budget. And I think the town will be surprised to find that out.
I think that based on our vote, which we all approved, take no action, that your fellow members on this, around this table agree with you and are sympathetic to your concerns and to the methodology it's going. They're not doing anything that's not written into the law that gives them an opportunity to do so. They're coming before the town meeting, asking for this money. I think it would probably pass. I think by expressing ourselves in terms of, yes, we think it's offloading their budget. And this particular area, though, I know they have big hits on it, but I like it and I don't like it.
I wouldn't characterize it as offloading their budget. They're not offloading anything. They're gonna spend 100% of what they were budgeted.
Yeah,
They've got potentially $200,000 more to spend. And it's a perfectly legitimate purpose to spend money on. It's just the way, the process that was used. It just, I'm concerned that the precedent is gonna set that other departments may do the same thing.
Al, would you want to print your remarks in red?
Print my remarks in red.
Yeah,
No.
Which ones?
On this one.
on this one,
Yeah.
considering the,
You can, I mean, like you said, Bernie,
I don't
it's,
think I've read this one
it's
yet.
it's gonna pass, because the town, any money the school can get from the town, I pretty much believe that most of the people there are gonna vote for it. But us expressing our concern might be enough that it is a concern, you know? What do you, does anybody feel the same way? I mean, should we be that concerned, or are we gonna be, not that I care what anyone thinks, but are we gonna be looked upon as not wanting to support the school? I don't want us to come across that way, but I do wanna come across with a concern, you know?
I think it would have been more appropriate to put this article on a regular annual warrant along with their budget.
Yeah, that would be the way you think it should have been handled,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Then you have the whole
Probably right,
picture.
Bernie.
But then they might as well have an internal contingency so they could just spend the money if they don't have it.
They do have, they do.
Yeah.
They just now have
Yeah,
it
right.
That's why
as
there's
an
no use to having it on the regular one, because.
Yeah, I
Right.
think it's just that the past process we went through for this last annual meeting leaves kind of a bad taste in my mouth, the way the whole process
Yeah.
went.
Yeah.
And it's not, unfortunately, emotional, is I would punish them saying, no, you can't do that because you did this, and I got been a little upset the way you did the previous, but I could easily punish them by saying no, but I'm not doing anything to them. I'm actually taking these children who are coming in and giving them the best service possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think it would have been more appropriate done at the annual when we compare it to their
Then why don't we
budget.
write, then why don't,
Just say we,
everyone agrees, maybe we should write it that way. You
Yeah.
know, have else, we can write it that way, if everyone, you know, agrees with that, what do you think?
I think mention that this article would have been more appropriately considered during the annual town meeting at the review of the entire budget.
However, what, part of the reason it shows up here,
Yeah, well,
it shows up in the new article where we're establishing a revolving funds bylaw, which is required now by the Massachusetts general laws. So, and,
That one funds it and established,
well, let me finish this.
but then
all right.
31,
This establishes it, and it establishes all the other ones that we presently have that are not in the bylaws. All our other revolving funds, library revolving fund, Hamilton rental, recycling, all these are revolving funds that the town meeting has approved, and the budget is approved in the spring town meeting.
Okay.
They're including the new one for schools, and in the future, it would be approved at Springtown meeting,
So
at the budget.
you say it's gonna be added with the others?
It will be
Come
every
every
spring.
spring?
Come one
Every
of those,
spring,
yes.
yes.
But
Okay.
is it being approved as a revolving fund?
no. Now, understand, these are approving funds that currently exist, but they are conforming now to statute.
Right.
And the statute now requires that in order to have a revolving fund, it has to be in the bylaws.
But if this,
Yes.
if what they're asking for
It
is
has
a
to be
revolving fund, they have to take receipts they get for the same purpose and put
revolving
it in
funds
the
are
fund?
self-funded. This
No.
isn't that.
Uh,
It says education fund in Article 31. It
Yep.
doesn't mention revolving. It's not,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
it's just a set aside.
But what it does is the unencumbered balance goes back to, you don't have to, even in these, you don't have to spend everything that's in the revolving fund.
But-
And it is refunded every year, whatever is required to bring
Well,
that balance up.
Well, that, but Els, you just said that it's self-funding.
Well,
Did you say
many
that?
of these other revolving
Some of them are,
funds
but some of them aren't.
Okay, so
self-funding.
then they don't have to be
Recycling
self-funding.
put some money
No,
in,
they're- These are funded by fees.
library put some money in, council on aging.
But this isn't,
No, we appropriated this one.
Shellfish, definitely, Board of Health.
so they all don't have to
definitely.
be self-funded.
I'm not sure if the treasurer
You mean a
has a
revolving
self-
fund,
tax
but
title
self-funded,
funds, yeah.
self-funded, correct,
But
correct.
This,
Code
excuse me,
enforcement.
that is if you get them, yes.
I think perhaps we're using the phraseology revolving fund inappropriately here. This is a stabilization fund. It runs parallel to the stabilization fund we as a town, as a whole, fund. Every year, we put in a certain percentage, and this affects our Moody's rating, bond rating, et cetera, the stabilization fund
Okay.
that we as a town, this is the stabilization fund for the sped community on the school side. It's not a revolving fund. I think we're misapplying the word.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Right,
Right, it's not a revolving fund.
no, it says an education fund.
Right.
Okay.
Stabilization,
And I don't
education,
think you need
stabilization.
permission from the Board of Selectmen to spend out of your revolving fund.
Okay. So once it's in there, as long as they spend it within the realm of what it's put in for, they can spend up to with the limit.
Whatever's there, yes, it has to be with approval of the selectmen and the school committee to spend
For the
those monies.
education fund, not for our standard revolving fund, right?
You're correct, this stabilization fund, very specifically, cannot be expended without the approval of both boards.
Okay.
The school committee and the selectmen.
Okay, so it doesn't give the school committee carte blanche in that field?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
Okay,
I think even the town stabilization fund requires, town meeting to spend.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's not easy either.
okay.
This is actually easier than that.
A little confusing, but I think I got it.
Good, okay. Is there any other questions, any clarification anybody needs?
No, I think it's an item that will be brought up at next town meeting, next spring when budgets come up, and that's appropriate.
Yeah, because I think, just as an aside, David has spoken or offered concern last year with the amount of monies that the school committee actually gets that we don't see on their budget. Some of those monies appear on our regular audit, which separates the amount of grants that they receive. And they receive upwards of about $3 million for the cafeteria and food and the like, and also monies in the sped, specifically for sped. So their overall budget is more than we actually see in terms of operation. These are grants, though, that must be spent in specific areas.
I guess my only point is that the town should have, just like all these fringes, that they don't reimburse the town for those. If we're gonna have an idea of what we're spending in the schools, I think we need that information. You can put in any little boxes you want, but I think the town should have the full picture of how much we're spending in the schools.
Now, if at least to have the understanding that how we're funding, and we're no exception in terms of how that monies are spent. Every other school department in the 354 cities and towns take these monies, federal grants, and spending them in the same manner. But I think you'd be more comfortable knowing what you're actually spending versus saying, you know, we're underfunding. This is underfunded specifically the schools itself, but they are getting more money perhaps than we're cognizant of.
Well, the grants are difficult because they're usually pretty restricted as what they can use them,
Yes, indeed.
whether you actually need it or not. That's the problem.
So we are aware of the amount of grants they get every year? Is that a number that comes up, Bernie?
Yeah, it's always published. In fact, when Derek passes out, usually there's 3 booklets in it from our audit
Okay.
company. And there is a very clear statement in there of listing the amount of grants that the school committee, the school department receives.
Okay, but,
Where you wanna be careful with grants is they've got a grant for 2 years, they hire someone and then expect you to finance it the
yeah,
third year.
Right. I've seen that happen in years past, yeah.
Right, so,
Hire someone on a grant and they're used to them and then bingo, the grant's done, what do you do?
And they become part of the operating staff.
yeah, just fold them into overhead.
And it's something, the state will oftentimes give us monies for a particular position that
Yeah.
we need. And they'll do 100%, then 70%, then 50%, and then 30%.
Zero.
So we gradually, often they do with police frequently, and at the end of 4 years, you're there with a staff of 40 people when you can only afford 39, but he's part of the staff, so you continue on.
There are also a lot of hidden costs to grants.
Oh,
I
indeed.
mean, they're not self-executing, so what their administrative staff is, just in terms of accounting for the expenditure of monies, particularly for the federal grants, is pretty rigorous. So I suspect there's a certain amount of administrative people that if we didn't get the grants, we wouldn't need those people. So it's just another hidden cost.
Okay, is there anything else? Any other issues that we'd like to discuss that we, just between ourselves? If there's more information, I can gather it for you. During the process, they're going to, Claire was telling me today, take certain articles and just package them together. Housekeeping articles that we typically have. One would be 33 with the reports, another one might be Article 1, transfers, because there's nothing going on. But there are articles on the warrant, so we have to vote on them. So
Claire
they're
does
gonna,
that every year, yeah.
yeah, so Claire's gonna, has to do a consent agenda, put them all together, just take one vote, and covers them all, so it reduces the time frame. Because she was wondering, I said, you know, she'd like to get this done by one night.
I
She's
don't
al-
see anything too controversial that would,
No, we just spent a lot of time on just one article.
no, I know, but my opinion is that article's gonna breeze through, simple, easy peasy. You guys feel any of these are gonna be super controversial? I mean, I thought Paul would be crazy until Derek explained it the other night.
Yeah.
I thought Paul would be a disaster, but
We probably don't even be voting on this.
yeah, the way he explained it really made a lot more sense, but is there any others that?
Eight might be,
Eight might be what,
that's adoption
Top
of fine.
things.
Yeah, I don't know what I wrote there.
Well, I think Ellis, in his explanation, covered the issue with respect, one line item in particular, that the issuing of the ticket or the for the infraction will not be the hearings officer.
yeah, I mean, fines are
Right.
fines. Do you think that might be controversial, huh, Dave?
It might be.
If they pick up on it.
I think Dave wrote this one.
Any other ones that,
Is the one about the town clerk going to be kind of?
I wrote it in such a way that I don't think so. I'm assuming people read it. I mean, this is it's not it's an administrative job. It's,
I get it, I'm just, I don't know
Right.
how people feel it's been voted for.
it was close last time. I think they actually called for an actual count.
a hand count?
Yeah, she declared it passed and then we hand counted and it suddenly wasn't.
I think also knowing that the current town clerk is going to be protected, and that's an emotion, she's very popular, and she does her job extremely well, knowing that creating this as an appointment versus an elected office, and that she has been told she will, they have an agreement with her, she will continue on after her elected term expires. She has expressed an interest though in retiring.
So I lifted her job description from the town website to save myself some effort. And then I put this position as largely administrative, requiring significant knowledge of various laws and record-keeping procedures. The cost of an appointed clerk is roughly in line with the cost of an elected clerk. Maybe I need to add a little more punch to that, but the finance committee believes this function is best served by a professional with the proper training, education, and state mandated certifications. Further, we believe the next town clerk should be properly vetted and supervised by the town administrator. I mean, it's just, it's a job.
I get it, I just
Yeah.
was raising the issue whether it might be
Right.
controversial.
Could be.
If there's something else I can put in there, let me know.
Yeah,
I mean,
What else you gonna
it's
say?
just a regular job. They're not making laws. They're not board of selectmen or, it's a job. The last one, in the event it doesn't get pulled, I'm not sure what we do about that. We haven't discussed how any of us feel about it,
That's
other
the whole
than,
thing to do with four, right? If,
They're pulling it
four is
based
kind
on,
of a one-time thing for this one.
right, but they go hand in hand, if one gets down, the other one gets pulled, correct?
yes,
Yeah, that's what he said.
the petitioner has agreed to pull it based on the fact that it's more appropriately concerned, or considered at the budget negotiation, or the regular town meeting to when the budget is appropriate there.
You know, if they pull a lot of people in for that, it'll pass, you know?
That
You know what I mean, that's the thing, they load up on that
Well, and
one.
that's why I'm saying, I don't have a recommendation that's going in the book, because if they're pulling it, just saying, hey, this isn't quite right, or this and that, is just gonna stir up things. If they don't pull it though, then we should probably say something.
What do you,
Personally, I don't know that it's appropriate to fund it, in our current situation at all, but
Well, the
well,
problem,
that's why he put in four, because he's gonna change the budget if it gets done. That's,
Right.
there's
Well,
no
I
hope about it right now.
He's
But
not
even-
gonna
even
change
in
the
this
budget.
break.
He's
Yeah.
going to reduce other
other
departments'
accounts.
budgets and
Departments.
accounts.
Current
by
operating
$66,000.
No,
And
well,
that's the
that's
point,
why he
so
wants to
people
do
need
the
to
adjustments.
understand that, it's not like we're voting to add $66,000 to the budget.
Right,
We're cutting other people's budgets
and I
to
think
account
that
for
should be
this.
in the explanation that we put in there.
Because, you know,
I
so,
think, I
and they
think we
want
wrote
this,
it in
but do they
four.
want some other important function cut?
Correct, correct.
The department.
As it basically,
had
though,
it
as
at
it
one
stands
point.
right now, there is no money to fund it.
So I
Without
wrote,
cuts.
I wrote on that
Correct.
side.
And I think
rather
that's
than
what
this
people need
side.
to understand.
Right, that's the key to that.
Yeah.
Derek had been in touch with Department of Revenue because he was concerned, what can he do? Obviously, because of the votes at town meeting, he's bound
Here,
to
or-
I think I'd
or
put something.
appropriate X
I
number of
guess that's
dollars,
what
and we
I'm
voted
asking.
for any one of the departments. He cannot do anything about it, he can't touch it. However, with this article, it allows him to alter it downward, only downward.
Right.
Town meeting itself is the only entity that can raise those budgets. And the difficulty, of course, we're doing this at an inappropriate time, we're in the middle of a fiscal year, and town meeting has already voted on the operating budgets for each of the departments. And the only way he can get money is to reduce them, because it goes into the budget. It's not something we can transfer out of free
He
cash.
couldn't get a warrant
Because it gives
article
us some
to
separate
increase the
entity.
budget? Somebody, we couldn't have a warrant article at this meeting to increase the budget by $66,000?
The-
If you had a petitioned article,
Yeah.
This was a petitioned article, and in the petitioned article, it said to raise and appropriate, which comes, so you can't take it out of free cash. Because of the way it was written, it has to come out of the tax revenues, which we've already spent.
Or appropriate, yeah.
yeah, you're right. Good way you phrased it, yeah.
That was the reason.
Yeah.
So in order to fund that, Derek will have to take money out of other line items in his budget.
And many of these articles, you do have to pay attention to how they're worded.
But the only thing, maybe I'm wrong, but hear me out on this. Four gives him tremendous power to cut whatever he feels is right to fund that. He's not letting people
He's
vote on what to cut.
correct.
Okay, see, now, to me, that's
But
a
now-
lot of power. I know it's only
But even-
$66,000,
He-
but you're letting him cut whatever he wants to fund conservation.
Because the way Council on Aging article is written,
I
it's
agree
the
with
only way we can do
We
that.
could
I-
stand up in this other article, say we're gonna cut the police by 30, and we're
Yeah,
gonna
see,
cut
you know,
It
and,
does.
and
cut the
However,
school by 30, and
however, it only gives him that power, assuming town meeting votes for another article such as 34.
okay,
And it's the
Now-
only purpose, he can only decrease the
no,
operating budgets
He-
collectively,
Yeah.
how much that article
he
is.
said that, and I understand all that. But what I'm saying is that if the Council of Aging, they pack the place, they're gonna pass it, okay? They bring in enough people to pass that vote. Now, So then, obviously, you gotta pass 4, because he needs to be able to find the money. Now, he has to make that decision on town floor that night?
No,
No, not
Okay.
according to our
That's
report.
where
Yeah,
I
but
think,
we
and he-
can't go through every line item in the budget and let
No.
people vote whether we cut that
Yeah.
one.
I
something
hear you,
else.
but
I
don't
make
you,
them name the police officer they wanna lay off. You stand up and tell me which one of these guys goes.
now,
Not Allison.
I just think that
That's why I'm
that's
not running for
gonna
office.
cause a giant, a lot of people are gonna, say a lot of people object to what he cuts, you're giving him the power to cut whatever he wants, and I think people are gonna say that that's,
unless we have had all the department budgets in the warrant. If we did, then town meeting could go through and do it themselves. Similar to what we do when we do a regular town
The
meeting and
reality
approve all
is,
the
he
budgets.
won't do it by himself.
However,
He'll decide what it is.
Department of Revenue is also-
Selectmen.
Yeah, Department of Revenue has also told him he cannot refuse to spend that money. He has to appropriate it and come by.
so they pass the article, he's gotta come up with the money.
He's got to.
Not a bang, he's gotta find it in the budget somewhere.
Right. This is between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I don't like it.
No,
I
none
don't
of us
like it
do.
at all.
Oh,
That's why we should do
horrible,
it the
because
next
it's-
town meeting.
We're in the middle of an operating year. I've got 5 people, say down Public Works, it's the most I have. I gotta do all my work with just those 5 people.
Yeah,
I may only have 4 as a result of this.
yeah.
What am I gonna do?
Would. You're right. And,
I don't know, Dave, I don't like it.
no, nobody likes it.
Nobody likes this in the circumstances. And I think the petitioner understands what she has created, but will resubmit this at the regular town meeting. We have to get a phraseology to change that, because this is a regular town meeting we're in.
It is a regular town meeting.
Yeah,
It's fall regular town meeting.
yeah.
I wonder if that's in the article,
No.
fall and spring.
Who decides to pull it if they're gonna pull it, or is it gonna get voted no matter what?
Only the petitioner can pull it.
So she could pull,
Assuming
who put it in as a petition?
Apparently there are 10 petitioners and we need all of them to,
she needs
Agree
to,
to it.
well, she can do it from the floor. And she has to ask them if they will agree. Not necessarily at the floor, but she has to come to the floor and say she
I
is.
think if she
asked
says
them
she
all.
wants to pull it though.
I suspect.
Oh, is that right?
but-
That's the feel that she was gonna pull
She
it?
has said that it's going to be pulled.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that, I'm
The
sorry.
town meeting may not allow her to.
But someone else,
It's possible someone will try to push it through, that's true.
that's the
Mhm.
problem.
Because it's a valid article.
So it was submitted in time with
Yeah,
a proper number of signatures and so on.
I guess my opinion is it stinks, but what do I know?
Nope, you're right. It does. And on the other hand, it's very good to have a COA
Oh, I'm not against that.
No,
That's the
no.
point, is I'm not against
No.
that. I just don't like the way it's coming about. How's that, yeah, maybe that's the way of it. Maybe else, can we say something like that?
What?
That we are for the Council of Aging, but we feel that it's,
Who's we?
us.
Ordered against 2.5. And he does this all together. We should fund the school instead.
It's inappropriate. We all agree with that.
What should we write that?
Well,
Not
no,
appropriate at this time.
because
That would imply that we approve of it.
Okay, so we don't wanna use it that way either. So,
I think the facts, I think Ellis has,
you mind reading it, Alice? Okay.
The finance committee was informed that this article will not be considered at this town meeting. To fund Article 34. To fund Article 34 at the fall town meeting, department budgets, which were approved in the spring town meeting, would have to be reduced in the middle of the fiscal year using Article 4.
Right, and I think
you should just leave it as a factual statement.
Yes,
And in the event that one of the petitioners decides that they do want to push through the article,
Yeah.
then you leave it to the town. We have the format in place that we can express all of these concerns. And then you leave it to the town to decide what's more important to us as a community, that we have this position with the trade-off that we now have to eliminate $66,000 that we already promised to other departments. Or do we say, probably the more reasonable thing is, it's a 6-month waiting period, and let's just reinvigorate the whole process when the spring rolls around, as opposed to actually putting a,
We have no opinion on, yeah.
We
Well,
have not- we did
that's what
not
I'm
vote.
asking.
it's just the reality of what it is. If the town decides to do it, then this is the trade-off, this is what.
So
we'll
all this is
have.
writing is just factual and we'll let it fly.
That's my
So
recommendation.
now,
Okay.
should it come to the floor and be approved, I would think that we should have an opinion on whether it should pass or not, in the unlikely event that it comes up.
Individuals can stand, individual members of the board can stand and express their concerns,
Rather than put it in the
rather than
opinion.
putting it in there.
Okay, Dave.
Well, I
That's
wouldn't
good.
put it in there, I would just read it at that time as a group statement, or a pair of group statements, one supporting,
Well,
one against.
we
but-
don't have to pass on the merits of whether we should do it or not. The fact of the matter, I think maybe as a committee, we can just say, this is the wrong time, we've passed the budget, we
Right,
don't
that's
think we
what,
ought
that's
to
what
be
I've done at the
discussing.
moment,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And
But
I as
that's
chair will
assuming it doesn't
advocate
come
that.
up.
And you as individuals, however, have the right to speak on your own, even though we're all sitting up there. But I will advocate the vote of the committee.
Okay. Okey-dokey.
Okay, and one of the articles they're gonna put as a consent agenda is the 16, which is the septic loan program. That's on every year.
Every year, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got something really short on that, so it's not a
Okay.
big deal.
The 21 may be in there also, which is the home rule petition for mobile homes.
Which one are you looking for? I lifted what we wrote last time for the little home thing, not reinventing the wheel.
The dog park, we have
16.
some discussion.
16 has no cost to the town.
None?
That's what, I spoke with Derek.
You're not even paying someone to do it?
No.
Nope.
Not even someone in the office?
No.
It's there every
You
year,
could
yeah.
say that. There is,
I did use the word
you did
negligible.
use
Yeah.
negligible,
Yeah, because the town borrows the money, we don't appropriate it.
right.
Oh, well.
Right, right.
But you're saying, all right, there's
There's town
administrative costs.
resources going toward it.
All right,
Mm.
okay.
And I basically said it for everyone else, that it's it reduces pollution for negligible cost of the town, so. And that it's a housekeeping issue.
Mhm.
There may be some discussion about the cemetery rules and regulations.
I,
Bunch of them. That's,
I read through those, I don't
I
really see
did too.
anything objectionable there. But at the end of the day, I don't think it has any town, finance impact, because they
No.
raise their own money, they spend their own money, and,
there's a ton of money there.
yeah, well, they have to
Maintenance.
take do perpetual care, that means like for a long time.
I
5,
know,
6, 7 years.
I know.
It's just not the town, they raise their own money, they
Yeah.
spend their own money, we can't suck money out and give it to the DPW, so
Yeah, so I
I
mean,
lost,
changing all those rules, it's,
I lost interest.
the
It
money's
doesn't
there,
have
they
a-
gotta spend it, so really, it doesn't affect anything in any way,
Doesn't have a
but the way
financial
they're doing it,
impact.
I guess.
Well, Claire had attended one
But
of their, or two
if
of their
you
meetings.
feel
and-
strongly, let me know
There
what
was
you
No,
want.
I mean, it is what it is, Ellis, right, I mean, I don't know, I like the idea of being dead and still spending money, that's not bad, huh?
That's what kids are for.
I guess.
And just remember, you can't take it with you, but you can take the passcode.
Mhm. Oh.
Take with me.
That's about it then. As far as the warrant is concerned, there's been no changes, no one seems to have an interest to do so. I want to compliment us. I think this is indeed not a financial issue regarding most of these articles, but we as a group have had some very interesting and spirited discussions. I think from my point of view, that the committee has grown, and from my point of view, building on what Dave had when his tenure as chairman, that we've come together, expressing our disagreements with each other in a rational, reasonable manner. And I feel, as a whole, the committee has more strength and respect from town meeting because of our open discussions that we had and expressions of our disagreements and ideas, etc.
Thanks.
And thank you very much.
Sometimes I ask too many questions.
Never asked too many questions in this.
I get carried away.
No, we'll just adjourn over to some watering hole and continue our discussions in a more spirited manner.
I've got 3 or 4 of these left to finish writing up. I'm hoping to knock them out. I was
You need
thinking
help
about
with
sending a couple over to Ken, just to make sure I understand his zoning voodoo well enough. Throwing out the pilot thing helps a good deal. I don't know what to make of that. As you can
And
see
Kelly will
from
have
me
the,
getting yelled at earlier.
and Kelly's gonna have to put it all together.
She did it with her eyes.
And this week, over the weekend at best, because we hopefully get it to the printer to Monday or Tuesday. Monday's a holiday,
Monday's a holiday,
but,
Oh, yeah, Thursday, that's right.
So if I can
I
get
never
it
get a
done
clear
tonight
idea.
or tomorrow morning, Dave and anyone else can check them. Dave's been good about going through them and giving me highlights and notes, and then send them out.
Kelly, do you need anything more from us at this point?
I'll talk to you after,
Okay.
yeah.
Prater Willie is spelled wrong in the
Okay,
article. It's Willi.
okay.
You can look it up.
No, that's fine. I take your word for it.
I was curious about who they
Right,
were,
what it
so
was,
I
yeah.
looked them up. I looked them up on the AG and the
Mhm.
IRS site, and then checked their site to see what they
Okay.
did. I wanted to make sure they were a public charity. They are.
Thanks, thanks for doing all this stuff. I skimmed through them, they look fun. Thank you, it's a lot of time.
Is there any other business at this time that anyone would like to bring
Bernie,
forward?
may I just,
Yes.
is it okay if I ask, selectman a question?
Certainly.
Al, do you feel, any of these articles might be more controversial than we're letting on to think? Do you think anything might, we should be ready for that that we're missing?
The pilot is pulled,
The solar pilot?
yeah, because everything's not ready to go.
So that's out.
Yeah, that's gotta come back to them,
All
because
right,
that's
that
money
one's
lost to the town.
Anything else we know of?
Probably the article, which is not a money article per se, which is the clerk as a appointed position. We might have an issue there.
We talked briefly about that. You think that one might be a problem?
Can't really express my thoughts,
No, okay.
except I think there's a problem now, where there wasn't a few weeks ago.
Okay. Any other ones? I mean, the cemetery one seems to have a lot of,
Cemetery is just cleaning up things internally, that's all.
so you don't think there's a lot of stuff in there, but you don't think it's gonna be a big issue?
No, I think the zoning one will be difficult, because people are gonna zone out when they see all the 2 or 3 pages of stuff, even though it's really just fixing up language, correcting, it's almost like Scribner's errors, et cetera. People are gonna go through that, and hopefully Ken will do a pretty thorough job of explaining it, and either the planning department or Ken will have to be able to answer any question anybody has.
Yeah, Alice said he was gonna contact Kent to help him write up maybe a little,
Yeah, I've asked him a couple
It's-
questions.
It's a difficult article because of the content,
because there are so many.
because there's so many.
It's-
But
okay.
of course, that's 50 years worth of cleaning up.
Yeah.
So.
My take on that was it doesn't change the spirit of,
It doesn't change, it doesn't really do anything.
so therefore it doesn't have a financial impact. And-
No, in a year from now, the state is going to rewrite all the zoning laws and everything, so everything's gonna be all, and the other town's gonna lose a whole bunch of authority, it looks like. But
Okay.
that's something else.
Why do we bother cleaning up then?
Well, because you
Because it
do it
needs to be.
anyways, you have no control, but the state is
Yeah.
planning on redoing.
Yeah, next year is all
Whole
going
bunch
to be
of
tossed
laws.
anyway, so.
We have, an issue, do you think that they're gonna, pull 34, the Council on Aging? What's your
No.
feel on that?
They're not gonna do that, I've been involved, talking to them about that, and the OBA, I went to a meeting of the COA as well. What I asked them to do was to consider what the effect would be if it passed on the budget. You know, I said, the problem is if it passes, we'd have to have another town meeting. I have to explain to them what it would all entail at the time when I spoke to them. Because we'd have an unbalanced budget, so we'd have to go back at it again. And at the end of the day, that means that some department will basically have their budget cut. Most likely it'll be the library.
That's why he has 4 in there, correct, to give him the power to do
I
that?
asked Derek to sit down with the town council, write an article that allows Derek to sit there and change the budget without having to go through another town meeting
Okay.
because of the Article 34. That's
Okay.
why it's there.
Okay.
Basically, the council on aging at the meeting I went to last month agreed that they would go ahead and not pull the article, they wanted to have the article on the floor so they can discuss what their point is, and then they'll ask to have the article removed or postponed to another time, probably the spring.
Okay,
That's assuming that nobody does anything stupid to aggravate somebody.
that's what we said, yeah.
And that's why I have that Article 4 put in.
Yeah, that's
That's
what.
our safety.
So back to the town clerk, and I don't wanna go too much into detail, but we have taken a position and written something on it. I'm concerned that we don't have.
Board of
all the-
Selectmen hasn't changed their opinion either, but I think there's another issue that
Okay.
will probably come out at the meeting.
Well, if there's more information, should we address it as a group? This is another one that doesn't seem to have a lot of financial impact, because it seems like the cost is the same either way, from what I'm understanding.
Yeah, probably, you know, it's hard to say whether you're appointing someone versus an elected official. Stuff like that, depends, you may end up paying more for, a clerk.
Yeah, elective, you know the price you're gonna pay. Pretty much, right?
Yep.
But if you're appointed, that could vary.
Well, it's negotiable.
Negotiable, I'm sorry, that's
It's
the right
higher,
word.
higher has a range.
Right.
And the job description comes in at a certain
Yeah,
level.
qualifications and all that means a lot,
I mean,
yeah.
if you look at the district, Wendy, who works for the Fire and Water District of Wareham, worked as, over in Bourne, in a position as a clerk treasurer. They brought her in, that was elected, but within 6 months, they converted that position to an appointed. And actually, they got someone who was highly qualified skill-wise. When you have an elected official, selecting everybody else, it's not necessarily skill, it's, popularity and how good you
Yeah.
campaign.
That
We're
was-
lucky she's,
That position, the clerk's position really should be an appointed position.
I
That
agree.
that was my write-up, was that the person should be
Yeah.
vetted during the hiring process and under the supervision of the town administrator, as I believe how it would end up.
Yeah.
So,
And also, I believe it would speed up the process of digitizing the records, et cetera, and everything down there. Because you'd have, a person going in there would be under a mandate to take care of all that and actually do it. Right now, the clerk is really completely in her own control there. There is no input from the town administrator, just so you know, or the board of selectmen.
because she's an elected official.
No, we're lucky, she's been there a long time, knows what she's doing, that's another.
Again, we're not discussing
Yeah,
that, but
right,
we're
right.
discussing is modernizing the department.
Right. Okay, that answered my question, Bernie.
Okay, anything else?
I think the other thing is your article, I think it's 40U.
Okay, yeah.
That one there, just so everybody understands, is, if it hasn't been explained thoroughly, which it should have been, is that's been put in, which allows the town, if anybody has any kind of, through the building department, any kind of violation, instead of having to go to court, to the magistrate, et cetera, the fine could be just transferred over to the treasurer's office and put on the tax bill, which eliminates us having to go to court anymore to deal with that.
Okay. I don't know, I think it's a good thing, I don't know.
Well, it is because the magistrates, 90% of the time, don't want to bother anything, they throw them out, you go back and forth. The average person in town realizes that they find me, big deal, but they'll be able to collect it.
Yeah, yeah,
Now it changes.
yeah.
Times-
I think it's a good thing.
So the time frame, everything changes, everything is instant now, so.
So if someone wants a hearing after they get their fine, who do they get their hearing with?
What do you think?
Selectman?
The Board of Selectmen?
No,
The
administrator?
person who gave them the fine in the first place?
And town council?
Town council. Okay.
So if they don't like that answer, can they push it over to the courts? Or they have no recourse? Derek seemed to think they, I think Derek seemed to think they had some recourse in the court.
I'm not sure, I mean, you're
Well,
very,
you do.
Let's go to court.
but you still have to pay the bill.
Right, it goes in there, you always have recourse to the courts.
Yes.
But you have to pay the bill.
Constitutional.
Right.
You have to pay the bill before you go to court.
You can, yeah, if you don't pay the bill, the town wants, the town can then proceed to sell the property.
Well, yeah, that
The
takes,
thing is, a lot of
takes
these
a long
fu-
time. If
Yeah.
you're-
A lot of these
Paying
fines
the
aren't gonna
taxes.
be, a lot of these fines aren't
If
gonna
you
be
have
worth
a-
going to
if you have
court.
a-
I mean,
if you
the
have a-
fees and a lawyer, they're not gonna be worth it, so it's
I mean,
not.
you can have an assessment of $80, and if it's outstanding, you can sell the land. You can sell the
You
house.
can, but yeah, you look like jerks if you took someone's property for a $50 fine.
We're a municipality.
Just trim back your bushes, this wouldn't be an issue.
You either trim back your bushes or look at someone else to do it for you.
That's right. No, it's really because of all these years, people have just ignored the rules, because they know that really, town never really could do much of anything. It was, I think we have a philosophy, you're not guilty unless you get caught. It's not a real good mantra for the town.
It's almost like not renewing your license, you know, but stuff, remember how they started that?
Right.
You know, that put a squash to all those excise tax and all that kind of crap.
So,
No license.
Yeah.
I have an unlicensed dog right now. Of course, they're chasing us around for the $25 a ride.
we'll get
Oh
you.
boy, Ellis.
Yeah, I don't know why they just don't take a credit card and going to town hall for $20 for a dog. That's ridiculous.
Oh, they don't take credit cards for that?
Beats me.
They took credit cards for everything now.
They should.
We charge 3% extra for that, that's all.
Oh, yeah? So I can just call up and or go on a site.
But you can do it in the building department.
Okay, shall we move on? Next item is approval meeting minutes for September 27th.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any questions or concerns or corrections? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Next meeting is town meeting unless issues come up. We may, if, as we typically do and traditionally, have some issue come up with more information, et cetera, may want to consider. So we will possibly meet at a minimum a half hour prior to the calling of town meeting.
Should we just plan on doing that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we should just make that
We
a
should
meeting.
just make that a meeting.
Very well then?
Should do it at 6 o'clock, make life easier.
6 o'clock.
That way you
6
get
o'clock.
done, and you get back into the hall in time.
Indeed, there's always conversation we have and talking about. So I will call next meeting, will be at 6 PM.
On 10/23.
Cafeteria,
Monday.
cafeteria.
And keep in mind, we are without a quorum this time. We have no need of a quorum, so if only 2 people show up, well, if we're there, Claire's good
For a town meeting.
for town meeting.
If Claire's
Actually,
there,
it's,
she's good.
Claire and the town clerk are there, that's all you need.
That's true. They're citizens of the town.
That's what I wrote for that.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't appear.
Could be fun.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
It's a vote. Thank you.
Very good. TV's still on, so just so you're aware of it.
Yeah, Bob has got a problem, he's over it,